He was the most powerful man on earth.
No! No! No!
He died on the floor alone in a pool of his own blood, surrounded by his closest friends. On the morning of his death, the most powerful man in the world received 3 warnings. A fortune teller stopped him in the street. His own wife begged him to stay home. A stranger pressed a scroll into his hand with the names of his killers written on it. He ignored every single one. Most people think Julius Caesar was murdered. They are wrong. Caesar wasn't killed by 60 senators with daggers. He was killed by a choice, his own. To understand why Caesar walked into his own death, you have to understand who he was. Not the statue, not the legend, the man. A boy born in a slum who refused to bow to a dictator at 18. A prisoner who told pirates he would crucify them and kept his promise. A general who killed 1 million men in 8 years. A father who lost the only daughter he ever loved. A lover who fathered a son with the most dangerous queen in history. Today, you are going to meet him. For 2000 years, we have told his story wrong. We have made him a tyrant or a hero, a villain or a god. But the truth is stranger than either. The truth is that Julius Caesar wasn't trying to destroy the Roman Republic. He was trying to save it. And the men who killed him didn't save Rome. They killed it. This is the story of the man who built an empire by losing his life. This is the story of Julius Caesar. Rome. The year is 100 BC. In a cramped house on the Sulla, the dirtiest, most dangerous neighborhood in the city, a baby is born. His mother holds him close. His father, a minor politician, watches from the doorway. They name him Caesius Julius Caesar. But here is the thing nobody expected. This child, born in a slum, born to a family with no money, no army, no power, would grow up to break the most powerful empire on earth. The Caesars claimed royal blood. They claimed to be descendant from the goddess Venus, from Aeneas, the hero of Troy, from kings. By the time Julius was born, they were broke, forgotten, just another patrician family clinging to a name that no longer impressed anyone. Young Julius watched the powerful men of Rome ride past his neighborhood every day. He saw the gold, he saw the soldiers, he saw the way people bowed. And something inside him decided, one day, that would be him. But Rome wasn't going to make it easy. Caesar was 18 years old when his world caught fire. A man named Sulla had just won a civil war. And Sulla wasn't a normal politician, he was a dictator. Sulla had a list, a long list, a list of every man in Rome he wanted dead. It was called the proscriptions. If your name was on it, soldiers came to your house, they killed you, they took your wealth, they sold your family into slavery. Thousands of names were on that list. And then Sulla added one more, Caius Julius Caesar. Why? Why would the most powerful man in Rome want a teenager dead? Because young Caesar had done something dangerous. He had married a girl named Cornelia, the daughter of Sulla's greatest enemy. Sulla gave Caesar a choice, divorce her or die. Most men would have folded. Most men would have run. Caesar said no. He refused to divorce her. He refused to bow. He looked the most powerful man in Rome in the eye and chose his wife over his life. That night, Caesar disappeared. For weeks, he hid in the mountains outside Rome. sleeping in different houses every night, sick with malaria, hunted like an animal. Soldiers found him once. He bribed them with everything he had to let him go. He was 18 years old, newly married, and the most powerful man in the world wanted him dead. Eventually, through family connections and powerful priests pleading on his behalf, Sulla was convinced to spare him. But before pardoning him, Sulla said something chilling. He looked at the men who begged for Caesar's life and said, "Have your way then and take him. But know this, in this young man I see many Caesars." Sulla had seen it, the danger, the ambition, the fire. He had seen what Caesar would become. And he was right. After surviving Sulla, Caesar did what every ambitious young Roman did. He left. He sailed east to study oratory in Greece, to learn how to speak, how to command, how to rule. But on the way, something happened that would reveal exactly what kind of a man Julius Caesar really was. The ship was attacked, boarded. Caesar was captured along with everyone else. The pirates had a system. They would kidnap rich Romans and demand a ransom. The bigger the prisoner, the bigger the prize. The captain looked at Caesar, sized him up, and demanded a ransom of 20 talents, a fortune. Caesar laughed. He actually laughed. 20 talents? Is that all I'm worth to you? He told the pirates they had no idea who they had just captured. He demanded they raise the ransom to 50 talents. The pirates were shocked. Their prisoner was negotiating his ransom up. For the next 38 days, Caesar lived among the pirates as their captive. But here is what is incredible. He didn't act like a prisoner. He acted like their king. He recited poems he had written. When the pirates didn't laugh at the right parts, he called them illiterate savages to their faces. When he wanted to sleep, he ordered them to be silent. When he played their games, he expected them to let him win. And every single day, he smiled at them and said the same thing. "When I am free, I'm going to come back and I'm going to crucify every single one of you." The pirates laughed. They thought he was joking. They thought he was a spoiled Roman boy with too much pride. After 38 days, the ransom arrived. The pirates released him. Caesar walked off their ship a free man. The pirates went back to their island. They drank. They counted their gold. They laughed about the funny Roman boy and his threats. Then 3 weeks later, the horizon went dark. Caesar came back with ships, with soldiers, with chains. He hunted down every single pirate who had captured him, every last one, and he kept his promise. He crucified them all. This is who Julius Caesar was. This is who he was at 25 years old. A man who, when threatened, didn't run. A man who, when captured, gave orders. A man who, when he made a promise of vengeance, kept it. And Rome had no idea what was coming. By his late 20s, Caesar was back in Rome, and he had one mission: power. But power in Rome wasn't taken with sword. Not yet. It was bought, borrowed, negotiated. To rise in Roman politics, you needed 3 things: a famous family name, he had that; the ability to give incredible speeches, he had trained for years; and money. He kind of had that. Caesar didn't have money, so he did something most Romans considered insane. He borrowed it, all of it. He took out loans so massive that if anyone called them in, he would be ruined for life. He spent that money on the people. He threw lavish gladiator games. He paid for free food. He built monuments. He funded festivals. And the people of Rome, the same people his ancestor had watched from their slum in the Suburra, started chanting his name. By the time he was 30, Caesar had become the most popular man in Rome. He was elected to office after office. closer to the ultimate prize, the consulship, the highest position in Rome. But the old families of Rome, the senators in their marble halls, they saw what was happening. They saw a young man with too much ambition, too much popularity, too much fire. They had seen this before. They knew how it ended, and they made a decision. Caesar must be stopped. But Caesar had already made his own decision. If the old men of Rome were going to stand against him, he would build an army of his own, and he knew exactly who his soldiers would be. Two men, two of the most powerful Romans alive. One was the richest man in the world. The other was Rome's greatest general. And together, these three men were about to make a deal that would shatter the Roman Republic forever. They called it the First Triumvirate, the deal that broke Rome. 60 BC, Rome. In a private villa, hidden away from the eyes of the Senate, three men met in secret. This meeting would change history forever. The first man, Marcus Licinius Crassus, the richest man in the entire Roman world. So wealthy, historians estimate his fortune in today's money would be worth over $200 billion. He owned half of Rome, literally buildings, slaves, mines, businesses, all his. There was just one thing his money couldn't buy: respect. The Senate looked down on him as a vulgar businessman. He wanted glory. He wanted military victories. He wanted his name carved into history. The second, Pompeius Magnus Pompey. Pompey the Great, Rome's greatest living general. The man who had crushed pirates, conquered the East, returned to Rome with so much treasure, he literally doubled the empire's annual income. The people called him Magnus the Great. But the Senate refused to give him what he wanted: land for his veteran soldiers. They were blocking him at every turn. He was furious. And the third, Julius Caesar, the youngest, the boldest, the one with nothing to lose. He had no money like Crassus, no army like Pompey, but he had something neither of them had: a vision. Caesar leaned forward, looked into the eyes of the two most powerful men in Rome, and spoke. The Senate stands in all our way. Apart, they will destroy us one by one. But together, we own Rome. It was an unholy alliance. The richest man, the greatest general, the most ambitious politician. Three men, one pact, total domination. History would call it First Triumvirate. Council of Rome. The Triumvirate worked. Crassus brought the money, Pompey brought the soldiers and political muscle, Caesar brought the brains and the people. In 59 BC, with their combined power, Caesar was elected consul, the highest office in Rome. But Caesar didn't want to just be consul. He wanted to become untouchable. He pushed laws through that helped Pompey. He pushed laws that helped Crassus. He gave land to the poor. He cut taxes for the rich. He made everyone happy except the Senate. The Senate hated him. They called him a tyrant, a populist, a threat to the republic. One senator in particular, a stubborn, righteous man named Cato, stood up day after day in the Senate, screaming that Caesar would be the death of Rome. Caesar didn't argue. He didn't fight. He just smiled, because Caesar knew something Cato didn't. His 1-year term as consul was almost over. After that, he needed to flee Rome fast before Senate could put him on trial for everything he had done. He needed a province to govern, far from Rome, with an army. The Senate, trying to insult him, gave him the worst job they could think of: a backwater province in the north, a dangerous frontier, a place barely worth conquering. Gaul, what is now modern-day France, Belgium, parts of Germany and Switzerland, a wild land filled with fierce barbarian tribes who had terrorized Rome for centuries. The senators thought they were burying him, sending him into a hopeless war. They had no idea what they had just done. They sent me to die in Gaul. Instead, I conquered. When Caesar arrived in Gaul, he had 4 legions, about 20,000 soldiers. The Gaul, they had millions. The Gauls were a nightmare for any general. They were taller than Romans, stronger. They fought naked sometimes, painted blue, screaming war cries that would freeze a man's blood. Their warriors collected the heads of enemies and hung them from their belts. They had defeated Roman armies before. They had even sacked Rome itself. Caesar was outnumbered, always outnumbered. But he had 3 things that Gaul didn't: discipline, engineering, and genius. Caesar didn't fight the Gauls one tribe at a time. He divided them. He made one tribe his ally, then used them to crush their neighbors. Then he turned on the ally. He played them against each other, manipulated them, lied to them, crushed them. In 8 years, Caesar fought hundreds of battles. He killed an estimated 1 million Gauls. He enslaved another million. He destroyed 800 cities. But the Gauls had one last hope. A man emerged, a young king, a warrior who united every Gallic tribe against Rome for the first time in history. His name was Vercingetorix. For months, he did what no one had ever done. He beat Caesar. He starved Roman armies, burned their supplies. Caesar was losing soldiers faster than he could replace them. The Gauls dared to dream of victory until the siege of Alesia. Vercingetorix retreated in a hilltop fortress city, Alesia, with 80,000 warriors. Caesar arrived with 60,000 Romans and surrounded the city. But then, something incredible happened. A Gallic relief army arrived, 250,000 warriors. Caesar had walked into the most impossible military situation in human history. He was outnumbered 5 to 1. He was surrounded, and every single Roman general in history would have surrendered. Caesar didn't surrender. He did something insane. He built 2 walls, one facing inward to keep Vercingetorix's army inside, one facing outward to fight the relief army. A double siege with his army caught in the middle. For days, the Romans fought on both sides at once, day and night, without sleep, without rest. And Caesar himself rode along the walls in his blood-red cloak, leading the defense personally. When the final battle came, Caesar took his last reserves, his personal cavalry, and led the charge himself. He smashed into the Gallic relief army from behind. The relief army broke, routed, ran. The Romans turned on Alesia and stormed the gates. Vercingetorix was finished. Caesar had done the impossible. Vercingetorix was thrown in chains, dragged back to Rome, paraded through the streets, and strangled in a prison cell 6 years later. Gaul belonged to Rome. And Caesar was no longer a politician. He was a god. While Caesar was conquering Gaul, Triumvirate falling apart. First, Crassus, the richest man in Rome, had grown jealousy of the military glory of Pompey and Caesar. So he raised his own army, marched east to conquer the Parthian Empire. It was a disaster. Crassus' army was annihilated. Crassus himself was captured. The Parthians, mocking his greed, poured molten gold down his throat. One triumvirate was dead. Then tragedy struck. Caesar, his daughter, Julia, was Pompey's wife. She was the only thing holding the alliance together. She loved them both. Her father, her husband, and in the 54 BC, Julia died in childbirth. The man who never showed weakness wept. The bond between Caesar and Pompey shattered. The two men who once shared everything, the two most powerful men in Rome, now had nothing connecting them. And Pompey, under pressure from the Senate, began to turn against Caesar. The senators whispered in Pompey's ears, "Caesar is becoming too powerful, too rich, too loved by the people. When he returns to Rome, he will not stop until he is king, and there will be no place left for you." Pompey listened. Pompey believed them. In 49 BC, the Senate gave Caesar an order: surrender your army, disband your legion, return to Rome to face trial. Caesar knew what that meant. If he returned without his army, the Senate would destroy him, charge him with crimes, execute him, erase his name from history. But if he refused, if he kept his army, that meant only one thing: civil war, Roman against Roman, brother against brother. A small, unremarkable river in northern Italy, the Rubicon. By Roman law, for any general to cross the Rubicon with his army was treason, a declaration of war against Rome itself. Caesar stood at the riverbank. Behind him, 5,000 of the most loyal soldiers in history. In front of him, a small muddy stream. Beyond it, everything: his destiny, his destruction, the death of the Roman Republic. He turned to his soldier. He looked at his officers. He whispered three words that would echo through history for 2,000 years. The die is cast. Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, and Rome would never be the same. Caesar had survived dictators. Caesar had survived pirates. He had conquered nations. But what came next, no man, not even Caesar, could survive alone. Because the woman who was about to walk into his life was about to change history forever. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, Rome panicked. The Senate had assumed Pompey could crush Caesar easily. Pompey was the greatest general alive, after all. But Pompey did something nobody expected. He ran. Pompey fled Rome itself, took half the Senate with him, sailed across the Adriatic to Greece to raise a massive army from Rome's eastern provinces. His plan was simple: let Caesar take Italy, then return with overwhelming force and crush him. It was a smart plan. It was also completely wrong, because Caesar didn't wait. He didn't sit in home to enjoy his victory. He didn't celebrate. He didn't rest. He chased Pompey. In just 2 months, Caesar took control of all of Italy, then Spain. Then he loaded his men onto ships, sailed across the sea, and landed in Greece. Pompey had twice as many soldiers. He had many cavalry, more supplies, more ships, more money. Caesar had nothing but his veterans from Gaul. But those veterans had marched with Caesar for 8 years. They had fought 1,000,000 Gauls. They had stood at Alesia. They were the most battle-hardened army in human history, and they would die for him. 48 BC, the largest Roman on-Roman battle ever fought. Pompey unleashed his elite cavalry, 7,000 horsemen, to smash Caesar's flank. It should have ended the battle, but Caesar had prepared a trap. He had a hidden line of soldiers with long spears. When Pompey's cavalry charged, they rode straight into the spears, strike at their faces. Caesar told his men, "They are vain young nobles. They will flee from scars." He was right. Pompey's cavalry, terrified of being disfigured, broke and ran. The rest, Pompey's army, collapsed. When Caesar walked through the battlefield afterwards, surrounded by thousands of dead Romans, he looked at the bodies of his fellow citizens and said quietly, "They wanted this. After everything I had done, they wanted this." Pompey escaped, just barely. He fled south toward the only place he thought was safe, Egypt, a wealthy kingdom allied with Rome, ruled by a young pharaoh, Ptolemy XIII. Pompey arrived at the Egyptian coast on a small boat, exhausted, defeated, hoping for protection. The Egyptian sent a small rowboat out to meet him. As Pompey climbed onto the boat, a soldier behind him drew a sword. Pompey turned. He recognized the man, an old Roman officer who had once served under him. He smiled sadly, and then the blade came down. The greatest general Rome had ever known was beheaded on a tiny boat off the coast of Egypt. His head was wrapped in cloth. His body was thrown into the sea. Days later, Caesar arrived in Egypt. Expecting battle instead, an Egyptian official walked up to him, carrying a basket. He opened it. Inside was Pompey's head. Caesar wept, not because he loved Pompey anymore, not because the war was over, but because Pompey had once been his friend, his son-in-law, the husband of his beloved Julia. And these Egyptian foreigners had murdered a great Roman, thinking it would please him. Caesar turned to the Egyptian official, his eyes cold, his voice deadly quiet. "You will regret this." Caesar marched his army into Alexandria, the capital of Egypt. Caesar took over the royal palace. He summoned the young pharaoh, Ptolemy XIII. He demanded answers about Pompey's murder. But Caesar didn't know. He had walked into the middle of an Egyptian civil war. The 14-year-old pharaoh Ptolemy was fighting for the throne against his own sister. Her name was Cleopatra. She was 21 years old. She was brilliant, beautiful, ruthless. She spoke 9 languages. She had been raised to rule from the moment she could walk. But her younger brother had stolen her throne and exiled her into the desert. Now, Caesar was in her palace, the most powerful man in the world, the man who could give her everything back. She had to reach him, but she couldn't walk into the palace. Her brother's soldier would kill her on sight. So Cleopatra came up with a plan so bold it sounds like a Hollywood movie. That night, a single boat slipped into Alexandria's harbor. A loyal servant climbed out, carrying a large rolled-up sack over his shoulder. He walked through the streets, past the guards, into the royal palace, up the marble stairs, and straight into Caesar's private chambers. The servant placed the sack on the floor in front of Caesar. Caesar, confused, gestured for him to open it. The servant unrolled the linen, and out of the sack stepped Cleopatra, the most dangerous queen in history and the most powerful man in the world, standing face to face. Caesar, 52 years old, hardened by war, by betrayal, by a lifetime of pain. Cleopatra, 21 years old, sharp as a blade, smart enough to know exactly what she was doing. She didn't beg, she didn't plead, she negotiated. She told Caesar she could give him Egypt. She could give him gold. She could give him an heir. She could give him a son. By morning, they were lovers. By the end of the week, Caesar had decided Cleopatra would be Queen of Egypt. her brother Ptolemy would die. The civil war in Egypt erupted into open battle for months. Caesar and Cleopatra were trapped together in the palace, surrounded by Ptolemy's army. They fought side by side. They fell in love. When the war finally ended, Ptolemy was dead, drowned trying to escape across the Nile. Cleopatra sat on the throne of Egypt, and 9 months later, she gave Caesar what no other woman had ever given him, a son. She named him Caesarion, Little Caesar, the boy who could one day rule both Rome and Egypt, the boy who could become the most powerful man in human history. But Caesar had a problem. He had a wife back in Rome, Calpurnia. He had enemies in Senate. If he brought Cleopatra and her son back to Rome openly, it would be a scandal that could destroy him. So he made a decision. He left them both in Egypt. He kissed his queen goodbye. He held his son for the last time and sailed back to Rome. When Caesar returned to Rome in 46 BC, he was unstoppable. He had defeated every enemy. Pompey was dead. Crassus was dead. The Senate's armies were destroyed. Vercingetorix was strangled. Egypt was his ally. There was nobody left to challenge him. The Senate, terrified, gave him title after title. Dictator, consul for 10 years, father of his country, imperator, and then the title that would change everything, dictator for life. For 500 years, Rome had been a republic. No king, no emperor, power shared between elected officials. The Roman people had thrown out of their last king centuries ago and sworn never again. But now Caesar was king in everything but name. He sat on a golden throne in the Senate. He wore the purple robes of ancient kings. He minted coins with his own face on them, something no living Roman had ever done. He renamed the month of his birth, Quintilis, after himself. That month is still on your calendar today, July. He reformed everything: the calendar, the Senate, citizenship laws, tax laws, the grain supply. He pardoned his enemies, even men who had fought him in the civil war. He gave the people massive gladiator games, free food, new monuments. The Roman people loved him. But the senators, the old families of Rome, the men who had ruled the republic for 500 years, they hated him. They watched as Caesar took more and more power. They watched as he was treated like a god. They watched as statues of him were placed next to the gods themselves. And in their dark corners and quiet meetings, a question began to circulate. Is Caesar going to make himself king? A small group of senators, men who had once been Caesar's friends, men he had pardoned after the civil war, men he had trusted, began to whisper to each other. They had a name for themselves: liberators. The liberators, they believed they were going to save Rome, save it from a tyrant, save it from a king. And at the center of this group was the one man Caesar trusted above all others, a young senator, a philosopher, a man Caesar had loved like a son, Marcus Junius Brutus. Brutus was the son of Caesar's longtime mistress, Servilia. There were even rumors that Caesar was the biological father of Brutus. Caesar had pardoned Brutus after Pharsalus. Even though Brutus had fought against him, he had given Brutus political offices, power, wealth, trust. He had told friends in private, "Brutus is my heir. He will inherit everything." And Brutus was about to drive a dagger into the heart of the man who loved him the most. The conspiracy grew. 60 senators were now part of the plot. They knew they had to act fast because in just a few weeks, March 18th, 44 BC, Caesar was scheduled to leave Rome on a massive military campaign. He planned to march east to finish what Crassus had failed to do, to conquer Parthia, and probably Persia, India, maybe even further. If Caesar left Rome alive, he would return as the conqueror of the known world, untouchable forever. The senator had one chance. It had to be before he left. They picked a date, a Senate meeting in 3 days, the Ides of March. But strange things began to happen in Rome. Romans believed deeply in omens, signs from the gods, and the omens were terrible. A fortune teller named Sparena stopped Caesar in the street one day and warned him, "Be aware the Ides of March." Caesar laughed and walked away. The night before the Senate meeting, Caesar's wife Calpurnia had a nightmare. She dreamed she was holding her husband's bloody body in her arms. She dreamed of a Rome on fire. She dreamed of his death. She woke up shaking. She begged Caesar, "Please, please don't go to the Senate tomorrow. Stay home just one day. I beg you." Caesar hesitated for a moment, just a moment. He considered listening to her. But then one of the conspirators arrived at his house, a senator named Decimus Brutus, another man Caesar trusted, another man Caesar had pardoned. Decimus laughed at Calpurnia's fear. He told Caesar, "Are you really going to let your wife's bad dreams stop you? The Senate will mock you. They will say Caesar is afraid, Caesar is weak. Caesar, proud, fearless, the man who had crossed the Rubicon, could not bear that thought." He kissed Calpurnia goodbye. He told her he would be home for dinner, and he walked out the door. On his way to the Senate, a man pushed through the crowd. He grabbed Caesar's robe. He pressed a small scroll into Caesar's hand. The man whispered urgently, "Read this now. It is about your life. Do not show anyone else." The scroll contained the entire plot, names of every conspirator, their plan, the weapon hidden in their togas. If Caesar had read it, he would have lived. But Caesar didn't read it. He tucked it under his arm and walked into the Senate. As he climbed the stairs, he passed the same fortune teller who had warned him weeks ago. Caesar smiled at the old man and said, "The Ides of March have come, and I am still here." The fortune teller looked into his eyes and quietly replied, "Yes, Caesar, they have come, but they have not yet gone." Caesar paused just for a second. Something passed across his face. Doubt, fear. He shook it off. He walked into the Senate chamber. The doors closed behind him. March 15, 44 BC. Mid-morning, Caesar entered the Senate. He was tired. He had been ill for weeks. He had epilepsy. He had nearly skipped the meeting entirely, but he was here now. He took his seat on the golden throne the Senate had given him. The throne that made him look more like a king than a Roman. Around him, 60 conspirators began to position themselves, each one carrying a hidden dagger beneath his toga. A senator named Julius Caesar approached Caesar first. He had a request. He wanted Caesar to pardon his exiled brother. He fell to his knees. He grabbed Caesar's toga. He began to beg. It was the signal. Caesar shouted in surprise, "Why? This is violence." Behind him, a senator named Casca drew his dagger and stabbed at Caesar's neck. But Casca was shaking, nervous. The blade only grazed Caesar's shoulder. For a single second, Caesar saw what was happening. He saw the daggers, he saw the faces, he saw the men he had trusted, the men he had pardoned, the men he had called friends. He grabbed Casca's wrist and snarled, "Casca, you villain, what are you doing?" He drove his pen, the one he had been holding, straight through Casca's arm. For a moment, Caesar fought back, the strongest man in Rome, the general who had crushed armies, the man who had survived dictators and pirates and 1,000 battlefields. He was fighting for his life. The senators swarmed. There were too many of them from every direction, daggers stabbing wildly, some of them even stabbing each other in their panic. Caesar fought. He twisted. He tried to draw his toga over his head. A blade caught him in the thigh, another in the chest, another in the back. He tried to escape, tumbled forward, slipped on his own blood. He fell at the foot of a statue. The statue Caesar fell beneath was a statue of Pompey, the man Caesar had defeated, the man Caesar had avenged. Weeping just 2 years before, Caesar was dying at the feet of his old friend. And then, in the chaos, Caesar looked up. Through the blood, through the blades, he saw a face he knew better than any other. A young man stepping forward, dagger raised. Brutus, the son of his lover, the man he had pardoned, the man he had loved like a son, the man he had named his will as one of his heirs. Caesar looked into Brutus' eyes, and in the final moment, according to the Greek historian Suetonius, Caesar did not say it to Brutus like Shakespeare wrote. He whispered something far more devastating in Greek, so the common Romans could not hear. He looked at the Brutus and said, "You too, my child?" Brutus drove the dagger in. Caesar pulled his toga over his head. He did not want them to see his face when he died. He did not want history to remember him afraid. He collapsed at Pompey's feet. 23 stab wounds, 60 senators, one man, Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in human history, was dead. He was 55 years old. The conspirator ran into the streets, screaming that Rome was free. They expected the people to celebrate. Instead, Rome went silent. The people of Rome had loved Caesar. They had adored him. He had given him food, land, games, a future. And now these arrogant senators had murdered their hero. 3 days later, Caesar's body was carried to the Rome Forum. His best friend, a brilliant general and politician named Mark Antony, stood before the crowd. Antony held up Caesar's bloody toga. He counted the stab wounds for the people, one by one. He showed them the gashes, the blood, the pieces of Caesar's body that the senators had butchered. And then he read Caesar's will. In his will, Caesar had given every Roman citizen a sum of money. He had left his beautiful gardens to the people of Rome as a public park. He had loved them, even in death. The crowd exploded. The people of Rome went mad with grief and fury. They tore apart benches. They lit a massive funeral pyre right there in the forum. They threw their own clothes onto the fire, anything to honor him. Then they grabbed torches and they went hunting. They burned the houses of the conspirator. They chased Brutus and Cassius and their allies out of Rome. Brutus fled. Cassius fled. Every assassin fled. The liberators had thought they were saving the Republic. Instead, they had just destroyed it forever. Far across the Mediterranean, in a palace in Alexandria, a young queen received a letter from Rome. Cleopatra read the words. Her hands trembled. The man she had loved, the father of her son, was dead. She had lost him. Her son had lost his father, and the dream of a child who would one day rule both Rome and Egypt, was now in serious danger. But Cleopatra was not finished. She still had a kingdom. She still had wealth beyond imagination. She still had a son who carried Caesar's blood. And soon, very soon, another Roman general would arrive at her palace, a man named Mark Antony, a man who would fall for her even harder than the Caesar did, a man whose love story with Cleopatra would become the most tragic romance in human history. But that is a story for another time. So this is the story of Julius Caesar, a boy born in a slum, a teenager who refused to bow to a dictator, a prisoner who promised to crucify his captors and kept his promise, a general who conquered a continent, a man who broke a 500-year republic, a lover who fathered a queen's son, a friend who was murdered by the men he had forgiven. He gave us the calendar on our phone. He gave us the month of July. He gave us a story that 2000 years later, we still cannot stop telling. Some men live for glory. Some men die for it. Caesar did the both.